When I was in the seminary, we took a trip from Wichita down to Pittsburgh, Kansas, and they packed all of us seminarians onto a school bus. And it was at the middle of the summer, so as you can imagine, it was like 1,000 degrees in that bus. The priest who planned it said that he didn't know that school buses didn't have air conditioners. It's like, what planet are you from, you know? And so, as we're going along, I fell asleep. But I had the misfortune of falling asleep with my mouth wide open, and the temptation was just too great for one of the other seminarians. So he took a piece of melted chocolate and placed it in my open mouth. And I woke up, and I started doing this, you know, not sure what was going on, and then everyone's laughing, and I'm really angry, as you can imagine. And I don't know if I got revenge on him, but I certainly wanted it. I certainly wanted it at that point. But I was thinking about that story because I was trying to imagine a few times in my life where I tasted something before I saw it. Because most of the time, we see what we're going to eat before we taste it, right? But in our psalm today, we say, taste and see the goodness of the Lord. It's like reversed from what is normal. Normally we see, then we taste. But the psalm says, taste, then see. And so the church fathers say this refers to the Eucharist, because in the Eucharist, yes, of course, we do see the sacred host that we are to receive, but we don't perceive with our senses exactly what it is, that it is truly the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus Christ. It is only after we receive it in Holy Communion and then we can see the effects that it has in our lives. And so we taste and see the goodness of the Lord. And the gospel today shares with us two effects that Holy Communion has upon us. The first one, Jesus tells us, is that it saves us from death. He says, whoever eats this bread will never die, and he will live forever. And so we know immediately that he's talking about spiritual death and spiritual life, because all of us will one day die physically, but he's saying, if you eat the bread of life, you will never die. You will live forever. And this is a beautiful gift. This is really important. He says, your ancestors ate the manna and they died, but the bread that I will give, you will eat and you will live forever. And so the Eucharist is the medicine of immortality. It is the antidote to death. You know, we don't have to go around looking for the life-giving waters of immortality. We already have it. Jesus gave it to us. It's called the Holy Eucharist. It is what we receive to live forever. And then he tells us that the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. And so not only does it protect us from death, it also gives us spiritual life. It gives life to the whole world. Jesus gave his life as a sacrifice for everyone in the world. But we have to receive this gift in Holy Communion to be able to participate in the life that he came to give us. And that's why it's so important. A little bit earlier in what Jesus was saying at this context, he says, unless you eat the bread, the flesh of the Son of Man, you do not have life within you. He says, unless. It's like a condition. Unless you eat the Holy Eucharist, you do not have life within you. That's what Jesus is telling us. And so this is a great gift that he gives to us. It's something that we should not neglect, because it is what gives spiritual life to our souls. It is equivalent to the manna that the Israelites ate in the desert as they approached the promised land. So in this life, we receive the Holy Eucharist in preparation for the life of the world to come. And we need this. You know, as we heard in the first reading, the prophet Elijah had to get up and eat, otherwise he wouldn't have enough strength. So it is for us to live our Christian lives, we need to eat the bread that comes down from heaven, the flesh of Christ, to be able to continue on our journey. And one final story about a saint that we celebrate today. Her name is Saint Clare of Assisi, and she was a companion of Saint Francis, and she founded a group of women that were nuns, the Poor Clares, and she loved the Blessed Sacrament. She loved the Eucharist. At that time, during the 13th century, they only received Holy Communion like 7 times a year. But all throughout the year, she was very devoted to Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. In the year 1240, this army of Saracens who were Muslims, they surrounded her town in San Damiano like bees, and they started climbing over the walls. And of course, all the religious sisters were really scared. They all ran to St. Clare, who was lying in a bed sick. And she got up with their help, and they went to the chapel, and there she prayed, and she said, Lord, you need to protect us from these enemies. And they heard a voice coming from the tabernacle, I will always protect you. And then she took the monstrance with the Eucharist in it out to the wall, to the window, and she placed the monstrance on the wall, and the army that was invading, they saw this brilliant light coming forth from the monstrance, and they all turned and fled. And the city was protected by the gift of the Holy Eucharist. And this is an amazing Eucharistic miracle. But we receive the same Eucharist. We adore the same Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament today. And the gift that Jesus gives us is better than protecting us from our physical enemies. He gives us everlasting life. He protects us from eternal death. And so this is a great gift. The Eucharist is something that we should always cherish and also receive with the proper dispositions, so that we too can taste and see the goodness of the Lord. That's what he wants us to do, to taste and see all that he has to give to us through this great gift of his own self in the Blessed Sacrament.